Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a panel which is government to government, so it is as official as it can get in a community convention, and we are about to see official proceedings. So brace yourself for that. The only difference is that normally the colleagues that we discuss issues between Pakistan and the United States with are sitting on my side. Normally we are across the table discussion issues, but this signifies it is normally at the end of events, official events, when we are addressing a press conference because we have reached a consensus. So that is the situation perhaps that can be depicted here. Let me introduce the panelists first. We have Mr. Greg Huber. Thank you for joining us, sir. He is the Assistant Administrator to the United States Agency for International Development with extensive regional experience. There has been a 7-decade-long partnership between Pakistan and the United States, and Usaid has played a major role there. We remember even growing up as children, we heard of PL 480 and terms like that. So there has been a lot going on. But in recent years, whatever has taken place, whatever major activity has taken place in this domain, Mr. Huger has been part of it. I'll let him explain it himself, but they have built, he has overseen the building of 1,000 kilometers of roads in Fatah. Was a program that was from 2013 to 15 in his earlier stint with the Usaid, but now he has come back in his capacity as Assistant Administrator to do a lot more, and we will go into the details as we move forward. Then we have Mr. Montans on my right. He is basically a finance, equity, investment, energy, and infrastructure specialist with the Usaid, with extensive experience in Latin America and the Middle East as well. We have him here to enlighten us on two specific initiatives, two specific programs of Usaid, namely the Diaspora, the Pakistani Diaspora survey that Usaid has recently conducted in collaboration with the University of Chicago. And also what is more pertinent here, to dilate on the Usaid Diaspora Investment Initiative for Development, which perhaps is something that the audience here would want to know, and perhaps as one of the outcomes of this convention, we can carry it forward from here. I also have the benefit of the presence of Ms. Catherine Ordonez. She is Pakistan Public Diplomacy Officer at the US Department of State. She is going to speak mainly on the areas she deals in, which is education and cultural exchanges that we have. So let's start. Mr. Huber, with you. Maybe the simplest of questions would be that take us through in terms of showcasing what the Usaid has done for Pakistan, what you would think as the major highlights, and how this collaboration, this economic and this commercial collaboration, this development collaboration that our two countries have had, particularly in recent times, have helped the objectives on ground in Pakistan and also strengthen the relationship on a more concrete footing. Please, sir.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Chowdhury, Deputy Chief of Mission Rizwan, and friends of Pakistan, members of the Pakistan diaspora in the United States. Thank you very much for inviting us to participate in this very important event today. We are delighted to be here. I would like to respond to the question first by saying that Ms. Patterson did an excellent and extensive job of explaining many of the specific things that the United States' collaboration with Pakistan since 1948 have achieved. And so, rather than go into another long list, I would like to highlight two instances where they've come together in a very nice way to mutual benefit. The first is in helping the SWAT area recover after the militancy events there and the floods of 2010, which really devastated that beautiful, large part of Pakistan. And it was an effort that was led on a daily basis by the U.S. ambassador in Islamabad from our side, and collaborating directly with the Pakistan civilian and military authorities to do everything possible to help that area get back on its feet. We spent $950 million in that endeavor. And again, without going into an exhaustive list of how we contributed that much money and effort to that challenge, it did rebuild the infrastructure. Schools, hospitals, clinics, water systems, roads, bridges, etc. It did help relaunch services to the communities. It did help get the economy going again. The SWAT trout farms, the 200+ hotels that were destroyed there, we helped in that program to rebuild. And now they're doing quite well, I understand. The peach growers, the potato growers, the various agricultural activities of that rich area, we helped relaunch. We worked with the telecom industry to help link those farmers with finance and sources of inputs to improve their activity. So that's an example of how all of these things that Ms. Patterson was talking about came together at a great moment of need in Swat, in an important part of Pakistan. The United States population learned about it and felt very good about having the opportunity to work with the officials of Pakistan and the people in those areas to move ahead. Let me talk a little bit about what USAID is doing under the new administration, and I'll mention three things. The first, our administrator, Mark Green, a man with great experience in international development, has emphasized that our broadest objective is to help countries get to the point where there's no need for international economic assistance. So our objective is going out of business. Some places it takes a little longer than others. The second point that I would like to emphasize in the USAID policy and strategy going forward, and this really relates very much to you, and that is that USAID is transitioning from being an organization that mainly gives grants and contracts to fund its own ideas, to one that reaches out to the private sector, all of you, to co-create, co-design, and co-fund activities that make sense to USAID and more broadly to you. And the third is, what concretely are we doing and planning to do over the next 4 years under the South Asia strategy? I'll mention three things. The first one is to help Pakistan mainstream FATA in whatever way Pakistan decides to do that. We have a good basis of relationships in FATA. We've been working there for years. We've invested about $1.2 billion in infrastructure and helping with services in the area. So we understand that Pakistan is working toward a definition of how to move FATA forward, how to integrate FATA with the rest of Pakistan in a more fulsome way. We want to help with that, and in so doing to help the 1.5 million internally displaced people who have returned. to have a good life. The second, and I'll go quickly on the next two for lack of time, the second is to work with communities which are vulnerable to violent extremism to gain a resilience against that. And I refer particularly to activities of the civil society that have to do with culture, music, sports, and breaking down the idea that if you're not like me, you're my enemy. And the third and final one is supporting the private sector to create jobs, particularly for the 3 million young people coming into the labor market every year. That is a bit broader statement than the specific answer to your question, but given what Ms. Patterson said about the overall program, I thought it was useful to do that.
No, you've certainly laid out very succinctly the plans that are there with the Usaid in terms of its operations in Pakistan. FATA certainly has been a great success, and there is every reason based on that success to continue to work in that area in terms of mainstreaming and joining with the government's efforts there of bringing FATA into the main fold of national life in Pakistan. Let me quickly move to Mr. Carnes. My first question would be for you to briefly share the main findings and in the first instance, and then the main recommendations of the Pakistani Diaspora survey that you have conducted lately in conjunction with the University of Chicago. So please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. So I should start out, we did this survey in late 2017 with the permission of our Office of Management and Budget. When U.S. government agencies survey U.S. citizens, we are required to get OPM approval, Office Personnel Management. We need to get their approval, and they look at the questionnaire instruments that we use to get information from U.S. citizens. So that took quite a while. So we did the survey in the summer of 2017, and we finally had a final report in the fall of 2017. With respect to the findings, essentially the findings were, you could divide them into 3 areas. So the first area was what we call social impact investment. The second area was commercial investment, and the third area was a bit more diffuse. This would be working on Pakistan's development in the areas of advocacy, mentorship, volunteerism, knowledge transfer. So the first area was social impact investment. Let me start with the definition. Social impact investment is essentially a combination of pure commercial returns, pure financial returns, combined with returns that are often somewhat qualitative in nature, but they have to do with improvements in health, education, and welfare of the target population. So very simply, it's a little bit less than a full commercial return, which is supplemented by social returns that are of interest to the person making the investment. So with respect to social impact investment, there was a lot of interest among the diaspora in becoming more aware of the opportunities that they could avail themselves of, and how they could get involved with international institutions to partner with them to come up with ways in which they could mobilize both their talents, their energy, their skills, and their money, their investment funds, in ways that would assist in the development of the country, specifically increase the contribution to GDP and create wealth, and more importantly, create jobs. In particular, I think it was mentioned before, but 60% of the country's population is currently age 29 or younger, so it's quite a very young demographic. So the need to come up with job creation strategies that could come from partnership with the diaspora is very, very urgent. So social impact investment was the first area that they expressed considerable interest, and I can discuss that a bit further a little bit later. The second one was pure commercial investment. There are many of you probably have relationships with brokers or other financial institutions, financial advisors, so there's a plethora of ways to get involved in Pakistan in terms of getting a full commercial investment, both investing directly in Pakistan or in the US or elsewhere. A couple of examples, you could, when Pakistani Meds issue sovereign bonds in foreign currency, you could contact your broker and get a piece of that. There is an exchange-traded fund traded on the New York Stock Exchange. The trading symbol is PAK. This is something that anybody can buy into. It has about 39 actual companies in Pakistan, Lucky Cement, Angro, Habib Bank, a few others that you all know of. You could buy into that. It's actually in the low end of its trading range for the past 3 years, so it's a ground floor opportunity. But that's one way you can directly invest in Pakistan through instruments that are readily available now, and you can expect a commercial return. The third area is advocacy, mentorship, volunteerism, and knowledge transfer. APNA was mentioned a few moments ago. APNA is a great example of an organization with which we are already partnering. We have a memorandum of understanding with APNA to get involved in telemedicine and transfer of both technology and skills that the professionals of APNA have. So there are many other ways that mentorship, advocacy, and volunteerism can be explored. In fact, we would like to seek your viewpoints on how you could partner with us in ways to take advantage of your skill sets, your knowledge of the market. So we would look forward to you talking to us here in Washington, and many of you travel back and forth to Pakistan. When you go to Pakistan, we invite you to talk very specifically with our local field office, we call it a mission, and we would like to hear your viewpoints on interests that you have and things that you might be able to do with us. We're seeking an alignment of interests, your interests, our interests, the country's interests, the government's interests, where we can partner with the alignment of interests going forward to achieve objectives that we preset. So essentially, those were the three major findings, and I can elaborate on this further if there are further questions.
Let me have just one follow-up question. I mean, we are running short of time, and we have to make a clock work of this convention. But you have spoken actually on the diaspora investment bit, but as a product of Usaid, as a specific project that we're carrying out in different countries, and for the benefit of people who are gathered here, some of them are really perhaps waiting on the fences to try and make some investments in the country of their origin, country of their ancestry, and you have experiences elsewhere in the world. Tell us something about more about the diaspora investment and how people can contribute to that, how they can join hands with you as Usaid, with other agencies perhaps of the US government, and make a change with investment in Pakistan, make that impact assessment in Pakistan. By the way, Pakistan is one of the countries, and that we know from our experience, particularly in the multilateral field, it is widely known that an intervention, an economic intervention or a policy intervention in Pakistan is the fastest to yield impact in terms of its results. I mean, you make a new policy or a policy change, and compared to other countries in the world, the gestation period is small, the policy gestation period is small, and the impact is quickest perhaps, at least in our region and in other developing countries. So bearing that in mind, how these people can take some initiative and be part of the diaspora investment for development initiatives that you have?
Well, there are many ways to get involved. As I mentioned a few moments ago, when you travel to Pakistan, we would invite you to talk to our field office to share your ideas, and those ideas can be across the board with regard to social impact returns, commercial returns, or getting involved and sharing your skill sets, knowledge of the market, etc. Very specifically to answer your question, at this point we have one project that is operating in Pakistan. We call it the Pakistan Private Investment Initiative. It's a bit unusual for AID because it's quite in the esoteric finance realm, but it is a private equity project whereby we basically catalyze the creation of 3 private equity funds with 3 general partners. All 3 of the general partners are Pakistani. The 3 are Abraj, JS Private Equity, and Indus Basin Holdings. And basically what we did there is we catalyzed each fund by putting in $24 million. The general partners that we selected were required to match our funding prior to initiating their investment programs. So this is a private equity fund that invests in Pakistani enterprises across all sectors. The investment thesis of each fund, quite frankly, is opportunistic, which is what we want. They seek commercial returns, and at the same time, we felt when we did this project, we had an alignment of interests whereby the general partners and the investees of these funds would make money, and of course we would achieve development objectives at the same time as they were achieving their objectives. Our objectives were to increase the flow of foreign direct investment into Pakistan and to create jobs in the enterprise sector, in the private sector. That being said, we have other projects that we are currently thinking about. We are currently discussing this with our field mission. Mr. Uger will be going out there very soon to talk with the senior management in our field office, and we hope to come up with some tangible ideas that would result in investable opportunities for the diaspora.
Thank you. Ms. Ordnance, what we know, and as already resonated here, is that Pakistan is the largest recipient of the US Fulbright program, and at least twice or thrice a year in embassy even, we host groups of around 100 students each who come from undergrad programs, and they are interested in immediately in Pakistani food and some briefing about the US-Pakistan relations also. So we host them fairly regularly. But tell us more what is there that is being done and perhaps is in the pipeline. Are there any other initiatives that you are thinking of, particularly in the field of education or both, primary, secondary, and tertiary education in all fields? Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I have an extremely fun job, in my own opinion, and I definitely appreciate all of you coming here so that we can learn more about what you're doing. Every day is pretty much a marathon for me, keeping up with all of the cultural and educational connections between our countries. I do want to emphasize that the educational and cultural cooperation between Pakistan and the United States really goes back almost 70 years. The Fulbright Commission, as Martha mentioned, was founded almost 70 years ago. They'll be celebrating their 70th anniversary in 2 years from now. And it's very important to note also that that's a binational commission that both countries are invested in. And also, not only is our Fulbright program receiving the largest U.S. government contribution, but also the government of Pakistan contributes a very significant amount to Fulbright to fund specifically PhDs, which is working towards their goals as well of higher education and improving their higher education system. And I did also want to mention, because in the last session they were discussing Fulbright being more of a one-way, Pakistani students coming to the United States more than US to Pakistan. But I did want to mention that we are trying to increase very slowly, admittedly, and with small numbers, but the US participants going to Pakistan. And we have had some in the last few years. Including some that are very doing remarkable things. I don't know if anyone has heard of Fred Rooney, for example, but he went to Pakistan, and as a Fulbright scholar there, he promoted transparency in their judicial system, and worked to expand equal access to judicial services for people who might not otherwise have access to them. And he used CUNY, University's Incubator for Justice, as a model. So that's just an example of one person, and there are many others. And I also want to talk about the university partnerships that we've worked to establish with our educational cultural programs. We've worked in the past about 8 years or so to found 20 different partnerships between US and Pakistani universities. This included 15 universities, 23 Pakistani universities. Many people in the diaspora community also really have been involved in kind of getting these partnerships founded, and so we greatly appreciate that. These programs are really all about creating linkages at the person-to-person level among leaders in universities, as well as students and future leaders. And part of that program also involves an exchange component. So people have traveled from the United States, from various universities to Pakistan to lead conferences, to teach classes, to meet with their peers and faculty. So that's an important component of our educational cooperation. We also, I don't want to go into too much in the weeds, because I know we are short on time, but want to mention a couple other cultural programs. In Pakistan, we have 18 what we call Lincoln Corners. These are basically multimedia resource centers where students and anyone can go. It's open. They can learn English. They can also learn about U.S. culture. And we also do speakers programs. So we bring people from the United States who are experts in various sectors to speak to Pakistani students. Many people in the Pakistani American community have also participated as speakers to share their knowledge. We have English programs, as Martha mentioned, the English Access Program, which is teaching English to very bright teenagers who otherwise wouldn't have a chance to learn English. Over 500 of those currently. We also have a program specifically related to employability of youth and teaching soft skills and English to at-risk youth. And in addition, we have cultural preservation projects. This is something maybe you're not aware of, but if you've been to Rohtas Fort, if you've been to Taxila, the Wazir Khan Mosque in Lahore, and a very interesting site, the Varun Dev, it's a Hindu temple on an island near Karachi. All of those sites, as well as a dozen others in Pakistan, are sites that we have had various projects to help, in a small part restore, which we consider very important to our cultural diplomacy. Those sites really help to contribute to economic development, provide tourism opportunities, and also kind of instill more pride in the cultural heritage and the diverse cultural heritage as well of Pakistan.
Thank you. There is still a lot, I'm sure, that is so fascinating and not known about US-Pakistan partnership in different areas, because what gets the news is very specific and perhaps a myopic view of the entire gamut of issues that we have in relationship and areas of cooperation that continue to grow at a people-to-people level. Ambassador Ilaz Chaudhry wants to have a word with us.
Thank you. Thank you all for attending this panel. But let me first and foremost thank the US government represented here by US State Department and in turn by Ms. Martha Patterson. Thank you for your remarks. It was very important for us to also have US government talk to the community, because in many ways what the embassy is doing and what the US government is doing is quite similar in its trust. The event that we have organized, Ms. Martha, is just a platform, and as the theme goes, connecting the dots within the community, because there is now a greater surge of opinion within the community that this is their home, because second generation is growing up, so they need to own up its laws, its values, its system, and participate more actively. So in the last 1 year, I particularly noticed when I traveled around that people take pride in being Americans, and they want to serve and want to be present and in every walk of life. So that is something which I thought embassy also is well served, because when they do well in this country, they bring good name to Pakistan automatically. And therefore they are, as you also mentioned and I have always indicated, that they are truly the real bridge between the two societies. People like me and my colleagues, they come and go, but they stay, so they are always there. So that was one idea. The second idea was what you touched on is the relationship between the two countries. I think Pakistan and the United States, as you indicated, it's a 70-year-long relationship. Yes, we have seen our ups and downs, but I know for sure that it will come back because there is a desire, deep desire within my country. I know of the importance of this relationship and of the breadth of the relationship. We talked about the broad-based relationship. Sometimes we tend to view everything from the security prism, but we forget that there is a lot else, and that's where USAID comes in. And I'm so happy that you're partnering with us to showcase to us and to the Pakistani American community, who will be so proud of your work that you have done in Sawad and Fatah and all the rest of the country, where even Pakistani development practitioners might find it difficult to go, but you've gone there and you've worked. And I have personally seen And it has been and you know, what you are giving to us here, we will like to put much of it in our outcome document, so that we want to showcase to the Pakistani American community how much the United States has invested in Pakistan and how much Pakistan has invested in the United States. So this relationship means well for both. And if it goes down, we both lose. So there's no way that we will let it go down. So that's why your presence here, the presence of State Department here, means a lot to us. Thank you so much for your contribution and your interest in Pakistan.